I don't know. I mean, I just sort of like came out of the womb saying I was an actor. I mean, by the time I could speak. Um, my mom said I came home from kindergarten and I said, I'm an actor. Why am I not in a play? I don't know why that was like in me. And then, even within that, it wasn't long after that I was starting to direct in high school and things like that. So it was just, I don't know. It just always felt like that was my sense of self, was to like be creating in that way.
All right, let's leave the therapist couch and move over to the directing chair. What inspired both of you to take up that side of the camera?
Well, for me, I think it was. So I look back on my younger years and realized that I was making a lot of horror films growing up in my house, which sounds creepy because I would always kill my dad.
It's hysterical. Like, I don't know. She shouldn't be here. She's way funnier than me.
No, but like I would cast my dad in the victim role, and he was my favorite one. We have a great relationship, I will add. It wasn't like some weird like I want you to die. But so he would always get killed. There would be ketchup everywhere, and I would just direct it, and I have the tapes still. And one day I think I'm going to release them on Instagram, so get ready for that. So I think I just was always attracted to it. I liked the idea of like telling the story rather than being like maybe just a cog in the overall machine, even though I do like that side of things too. But sometimes it's nice to just kind of steer the vision a little bit, and create something that definitely is your voice.
Absolutely. And I've told you this before in person. I'm a big fan of your films. I really think you've done out of the gate. I think you've done a really tremendous job, and I'm looking forward to where that path of your career takes you.
Thank you.
And you, Jennifer, by all means, you are no slouch in that department either. You've done some really good stuff, and I've enjoyed your work equally as well. What was your impetus for trying your hand at directing?
I think it was multiple things. I did start, like I mentioned earlier, I started directing theater pretty young, so I really I knew at a pretty young age I enjoyed kind of shaping the overall picture and having sort of this heartbeat to the story and knowing that I could sort of guard that and protect that and build around it in all the different areas. And then, I was so lucky to start working so young as an actor and to work daily for so long. And as I was on set and I was kind of consuming all of the technical stuff and realizing, I started to get really excited and passionate about lenses and gear and the tech and and so I was like, I really want to try this. And I was such a fan of, the cinema of the 70s and the sort of auteur filmmakers and all of the interesting things that were going on both with acting and directing at that time. And I think, as I was sort of working on my second show in a row of like 6-year long stretches, there's something that's like incredible about that, obviously. And then there's also something where you're playing the same person every day for all those years, and you have this hunger to create, in a new way. And so I think the timing of it was sort of connected to feeling like I was ready to add something new to the creative cycle in my life at that point.
Absolutely. Out of curiosity, you mentioned '70s auteur. Any particular filmmaker that stands out, or?
There's so many for different reasons. I can't point to just one, but I have a real soft spot for Hal Ashby because I feel like he has this really amazing balance between heart and humor, that's very grounded, and also there's always a very poignant message in what he's saying, but without it being preachy or obvious. It's just sort of in the heartbeat of the film, and so I really appreciate that about him. But a lot of my film education came from reading things, articles, interviews, books, all the things that Scorsese puts out, because he is such an incredible, like, articulate educator about film. I mean, he's extensively worked to protect old films and restore old films and all those kinds of things. But like, he's got an amazing series on the Criterion Collection right now. It's called World Cinema with Scorsese, and like, he's just seen everything, and it's like he has like a photographic memory and like can recount shot by shot, movement by movement, moment by moment. And so there's this way that he talks about film that I feel like really expanded my mind in the way that I can see other films, or I can take in I could watch something. He talks a lot about like B movies and like movies that we might not consider to be excellent overall, but how important it is to find the things that are excellent within that and to build on that when you're working, and things like that where it taught me how to watch every movie whether I liked it or not. Like it's like how to kind of take the good and leave the bad, or appreciate the effort even if you feel like it's a little bit of a near miss, and figure out how to like grow that seed in your own work in some way if it's something that sort of resonates with you. So he's someone who continues to be influential because of how articulate he is about the way he educates about film.
Very much so. He and Sergei Eisenstein, I think, are the two people that made films and then can even dissect their own work in a dispassionate, clinical manner and explain it with clarity. And yeah, and you raise a very good point too about how you don't have, if you're studying film, you don't have to like the film to learn something from it. If you could divorce yourself from that and just look at it from the technical aspect of what's going on, you will accept that knowledge and you will gain from it as a filmmaker. That's tremendous. All right, we got to the high end. Let's have a little fun now. You both worked, of course, on effects shows, makeup effects, special effects. What's the craziest thing you've experienced from working in those environments?
That is going to be all Karen. She's gone through things that I have never, ever even imagined going through. I mean, I got the text messages when she was in hour 4, turning blue and having her head shaved.
I will say it on House, there was a fair amount of blood spurts and some crazy.
Oh yeah, I know. I got like coughed on and spit on and blood on all the time. It was like, oh, someone's gonna cough blood, cough it on Cameron. If someone's gonna throw up, oh, you can throw up on Cameron. But I really feel like Karen takes the cake on this one. I feel like this is all Karen.
Oh God, have you ever done like full prosthetics?
Not like that. I mean, except for when I was in Big Stan and they put prosthetic boobs on me.
No.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it was weird.
Where can I get them?
I have them. I kept them. I was thinking about that because when I moved, I mean, it was years ago now. I wasn't here to move. I was already in Vancouver doing Once Upon a Time, and so I had to hire like a company to pack me up and move me. And when I was opening my boxes, I found the prosthetic boobs, and I just thought, these people.
I thought they found home with them like Jennifer Morrison has these boobs in her eyes.
I don't know. It felt like it was something I should say.
Well, that's just makeup effects too. I'm talking on Once Upon a Time, lots of effects, blue screen things.
Yes.
Any moment where you just stood there and you're like, I'm supposed to do this? What for?
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, how do you feel about the green screen stuff, Karen? I mean, how does that register for you?
It feels as normal to me as anything at this point. Like I'm always on green screens. I'm always like, okay, roughly what is the terrain I'm on? Like, what are we dealing with? Is it windy? Is it not? And you have to ask these questions beforehand. I'm like, and also you have to ask these questions when I'm Nebula because they don't put wind machines on me because I have no hair and it doesn't do anything.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
But no, I don't mind green screen work. You have to use your imagination, and then it's cool when you get to watch it. Yeah, I'm actually, I'm starting to grow fond of it in a weird way because although it's easier to be in the environment for sure because you can react to the elements, sometimes it's nice to be in a studio where it's temperature controlled and you're not out there dying. And, it gets to the point sometimes where you're like, I just want to be in a nice environment where it's warm and I can have my regular coffee.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I have sort of similar sentiments. And also, like, we've come so far.
You serious? Now? I bet my mom did something.
Or the castle or the whatever we were in was going to sort of look like, and they'd have sort of the boundaries mapped out, and there'd be a certain amount of practical things there to kind of give us guidelines. And then, I mean, in a way, it's no more ridiculous than anything else we're pretending. I mean, whether I'm on a beach pretending to open a portal with a magic bean, or I'm on a green stage pretending to open a magic portal with a bean, it's just as crazy either way. So you have to do the same homework as an actor to like ground that and find that and find the substitutions that make that feel real and personal for you. And so oftentimes I think because we're dealing with sort of sci-fi elements within those green screen worlds, it's within the homework we have to do as an actor anyway, whether we're on a green screen or not.
You know what's interesting on Avengers, the previs now is so advanced that like I would be shooting a scene maybe where I'm like fighting Thanos, and what that is like a guy in a weird suit, and then I'm being attacked by a plant. Why have I positioned myself in the plant? So he'd have like a big stick coming out of his head, and then like a tennis ball on the top, and that's what the eye line of Thanos would be because he's so tall. So like you have to remember to not look at the person's eyes, but at the stick.
Yeah.
And fighting them though, like punch, fight, right? So I'll like film that, and then I will walk to the monitor in the space of 30 seconds, and they can show me my character fighting actual Thanos because it's that quick. They're just able to do it instantly now, and I'm just like, how does that even work?
Wow.
It's mind-boggling.
The future. What's the dream project? What either as performers or directors, what would you think would be maybe your dream project right now?
That's a tough one. I mean, I feel like a lot of what I've reflected on actually during the quarantine and leading up to all of the civil unrest and everything else that's going on has just been, I think when we're in really uncomfortable, uncertain times, you have to sort of reflect on what are your priorities and what's important and what is it that you want to contribute to the world. And so I think my answer to this question might have been different 6 months ago, but a lot of the time that I've spent especially during the quarantine time has just been kind of saying no to a lot of things in order to have space to say yes to the things that really make my heart move, and make me feel like I really want to pour my heart and soul into this. And so I've been really looking to find something that has that kind of like I was saying about Hal Ashby, where there's sort of this like heartbeat of a message that lives in something. But as a filmmaker, really looking for something that has that heartbeat of a message, but buried in the storytelling in a way where it doesn't feel preachy or overwhelming, but it actually just feels like you're offering something to the world that helps give people a place to maybe imagine being more empathetic or more open or more engaged in their community, or see the possibilities that, like, because we all are raised different ways and live different ways, that we may not completely understand someone else's circumstance. And so a lot of what I've been searching for are stories that have those seeds in them, and have the potential to be able to be entertaining and to be emotional, and to be all the things you want a film to be, but to also know that there is that sort of heartbeat to the story as well.
Yeah.
And in terms of dream project, I would say, I think like I would love to just have one really good crack at a dramatic role, like a really, really dramatic role. I feel like I haven't really done so much of that in my career so far. When I think back on what I used to do as a teenager and stuff, it was definitely more in that space when I was like studying. So I would love to come back to that and do something that's just really, really hard going for me. Hopefully not to watch. Maybe something like that. And then as a filmmaker, it's my next film, Axe Wound, which who knows if it'll ever get made, but like it's a weird movie. And that is such a dream project for me. So yeah. Oh no, did we lose Jennifer?
I think we're rebooting her. She looked like she was lagging a bit, so.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, yeah.
She was getting the underwater aquarium work.
So yeah, something like in the filmmaking space, definitely something like maybe with a nod to horror, but more of a performance piece for an actress that is not me, because I've done the filmmaking and acting thing at the same time, and it was amazing, but also I realized that both of those jobs take everything you've got if you really are putting your heart and soul into it. So I've decided to separate them. Actually, that's an interesting question for Jennifer. Is like, how do you feel about acting and directing at the same time? I was just saying, I have a hard time doing both at the same time.
Yeah, I have yet to. You've done a lot more of that than I have. I've yet to fully go into that. I mean, I've had little, a line here or there and things. I do think I'd like to do that at some point. Kind of because of similar what you're saying in terms of feeling if you really wanted a meaty dramatic role. I feel like this business sort of likes to put everybody in a box and go like, oh, this is what Karen does, and this is what Jen does, and this is how it goes, and we know that we have a lot more to us, and also I think as an artist you always want to feel a little bit afraid so that you can stretch. You want to take on something that's not what you've done before, and you want to take on something that's a little bit scary or outside your comfort zone, and I don't know that someone else is going to give me the chance to do that. So my hope would be that I would get to a place as a filmmaker that I'm comfortable enough, not just making the film, but also putting myself in a role, whether it's, a supporting role or the lead role, whatever. I don't know what it would be, but to just give myself an opportunity to like be a little bit afraid of something that's outside my comfort zone.
Yeah.
You both strike me as again competent enough directors that if it feels right, you'll put yourself in the right role. And I don't think you're the type that would do vanity pieces.
Well, we'll call you when we're having emotional breakdowns while we're directing ourselves.
Ladies, I
am
at your eternal service. Okay, well, I think we got enough questions from our audience now, so what do you say we take some of them?
Do it.
All right, Jude, take us away. And this first one comes from Kevin, and wants to know, if you hadn't gone into acting, what would you have done?
Well, for me, I think I'm going back to therapy again. I think like something in that space, I just love it. Like I mostly read are psychology essays. That is the bulk of my reading in life, but just like so fascinated by it. Like, why is this person doing this? What's this mental condition like? It's just really fascinating, and it definitely ties into acting because I can take that information and thread it into the characters. But I have a passion for it, so something in that space, I think.
Oh, that's cool. I'm just like, I have all these things I need to ask you for articles about now.
Oh yeah.
We'll follow up after this. I don't know. I think it's anything that would continue to be creative in its own way. Like maybe an interior designer or something like that. I feel like I just always love having a project. I love kind of like getting in there and making the thing and seeing something. Like one of the things I've really gotten into since I've had more time is baking, which I had never baked before, nor did I know if I could bake or not. And I was talking to Jerry about it, and he was like, what do you think it is that you love so much about baking? And I said, well, there is something sort of therapeutic and very like sort of zen about the whole experience, but also to watch something transform. Because like even baking compared to cooking to me is like way more exciting. So it's like you make this thing and there's this sort of science to it, and you're hoping that your science is right. And then if it is, it rises and it has the right texture and it tastes right, so it's like there's something interesting about like you make this thing and then you put it in this oven and then it changes. I don't know. There's something interesting about that kind of transformative stuff. So I think anything that feels like you kind of like dig in and you like create something new feels like a career I might take on.
When you're baking, are you the type that stares at it through the glass with a light on, or you put it in and forget it until the buzzer goes off?
I probably would be staring at it, except that I've been tracking my macros, which is like a whole. I mean, listen, we'd need like a 3-hour live Q&A for me to explain what that means. But in order to have like balance with my food, which means I enter everything on my FitnessPal app. So whenever I bake, I have to keep track of however many grams of everything I've put in. Oh, wow. So the oven time is when I'm creating the recipe in my FitnessPal, and then like do the dishes. So it's a good. It's like a little bit arduous, but it's worth it because then you know exactly what your macros are on the other side. But also like it's a good distraction from like the temptation to stare at it and hope that it's rising.
Excellent. Kevin, thank you for that. That took us down a fun one. What's next? This comes from Caleb. Have you ever played or been on the receiving end of a prank on the set?
Prank. My mind always goes blank with the prank questions. There's always pranks all day long.
Yeah.
I feel like it depends on the project. You know, I mean, I think I'm guessing with. I've never been in a Marvel movie, but I'm guessing with the Marvel movies and stuff, there's just such bigger setup times and like there's sort of space for there to be stuff like that goes down. It's like, you know, you guys have 6 months to shoot and, you know, whatever, all these crazy things. Whereas like pretty much everything I've ever been involved with, it's always a time crunch. And so there's just not a lot of space on a lot of projects for there to be like, I think people think we're all just like sitting around goofing around, and like literally every single day is like trying to make the most of every second of every moment, and you're trying to squeeze every ounce out of the day that you can get. And you know, on a television show, you're shooting like 8 pages a day, which means the setups have to be really quick. You know, by the time you've walked away from the set and looked at your lines for a couple minutes, you're back on the set doing another setup. You know, so there's not a lot of downtime on the projects that I've been a part of, and certainly when I'm directing. I mean, when I'm directing, it's like, you know, an hour feels like 30 seconds. It's amazing how fast time flies. So so it's interesting because I feel like, you know, I was recently talking to someone who's not in the industry, very, very smart guy who was asking all these questions, and I realized like the perception on the outside of what it takes to make a project is so different than the reality of what it is to make the project. And you know, like I said, every schedule is different, and every project is different, and every budget is different, and that influences all those things. But for the most part, most things are always like stretching to get every ounce of seconds out of the day, you know, and you want to get one more setup or one more take or one more, you know, before
we're losing daylight.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, I can honestly say I have not really been on sets where there were pranks, but only because everyone has felt those, like, you know, that time pressure crunch.
I feel like I have been. I mean, like, so on Jumanji, Dwayne Johnson is the prankster. Oh my god, like he is like truly like loves it. Like all day long. Like he so we were filming in the jungle, and like this is a small prank, right? So like it's not this big thing. But like when you're surrounded by insects, and we've got those beasties in Scotland, when there's beasties everywhere, and then he takes a shard of grass and just gently goes on the back of your shin with it. Like a poison spider, because 100% is. And then you like yelp and run away. So it's a very small prank with a very large result. And
Well, you know, it doesn't surprise me as a prankster, because who in their right mind is ever going to call him out?
well, my
Dwayne, you're funny, man. No.
I think I'm the only one that turned around to the shard of grass that I felt with my hand in a fist. Like, I don't know what I thought, punch the spider. Like, I was just ready, and then I realized I had my fist up to the rock and was like, that's not what you think it is.
I'm sure he had his $1 million smile.
No, I really liked it.
Cool, Caleb, thank you for that one. Jude, what's next? This one's from Beth. Out of all the characters you have played, which one or ones have inspired you the most? And which of those characteristics do you relate to?
Who's inspired me? I mean, I think in some ways, I guess I would say who has inspired me the most is probably Allison Cameron, just because of the years of schooling and education and knowledge and insight that you'd have to be an immunologist, and then to also be a part of the team that she was a part of at such a high level.
I'm gonna become.
And then also to be able to find it within herself to sort of grow and manage how intense the environment could be with a doctor like Dr. House. You know, I'm like talking about this as if it were real, you know. So I think that she's someone who, if she were a real person, I would really admire.
Oh.
And obviously I feel there's things like that about Emma as well. I think maybe, I think the character that I've played that I have the most in common with is probably Tess from Warrior. I know that doesn't fit in the Comic-Con sort of.
No, everything's on the table.
But she's just where she came from, or where her heart came from in like certain arguments, or where she'd stand, or the things that would scare her, things she was fighting for in her relationship, and the way that she, really wanted to protect her family and wanted to have a good life with her family. I think a lot of those values were values that I really understood and shared with her.
For me, I'm gonna go with Nebula, which sounds weird because I've chosen to say this. But
She's actually sort of secretly blue. No one knows this, but
yeah.
she spent hours making her skin look like this today.
No, I feel like I was able to use like a lot of the psychology essays on that character because she's someone who dealt with abuse from her father from such a young age. Not to make it too heavy, but like he pitted the siblings against each other, and she was the inferior one. She was, the scapegoat, and then the other one was the golden child. And so it's actually quite a common thing to happen within families and siblings. I don't have any siblings, so it's something I had to really read up on. But so I kind of just admire like that she's able to kind of slightly move past that a little bit, and in Avengers you had to like face the source of her abuse, and then actually watch him get eliminated from her life. And so I think that I'm sort of thinking about future Nebula in the sense of like what's she gonna be like now that that source of abuse has gone out of her life? Like how's she gonna build herself back up again? Because it's an odd feeling, I think, for someone who's been abused by a parent because they still love them and they're sad that they're gone, but also they hate them and they're glad that they're gone. And so I think she's just had a really hard time of it, really. And so I don't know if it's admiration that I feel towards that, but more maybe like sympathy and empathy. And I'm interested to maybe try and take her to a place now where she's starting to rebuild her life.
And we all wait with bated breath for that next chapter in Nebula's story.
Yes.
Absolutely. Beth, thank you for that. That was a great one. Jude, what do we have next? From Chippy. Have you ever taken anything from the set after a shoot is completed? Well, you're the fifth.
I took my boobs.
That is ridiculous.
And the thing is, you know what? I've never even answered that question that way because I forgot until you were talking about the prosthetics. Yeah.
I really think that you should show them on camera.
They're under the house. I could probably go find them. I'd have to do a little bit of digging.
I've taken the binoculars from the TARDIS on Doctor.
Oh, that's cool.
Like them. I was like, I've earned these. I've done this for years. I've served the Doctor. These are mine. And so I just took them, and I didn't feel bad.
No, I wouldn't feel bad either.
Excellent. Chippy, thank you for that one. That was good. Jude, what do we have next? From Kelly. What would you say was the most difficult scene you have ever filmed?
Ooh.
For me, probably my goodbye scene in Doctor Who. So I got plucked from complete obscurity to be in Doctor Who. So like I, had done barely anything, but was trying to be an actress, and then just got this show, and it really changes your life in the UK. It's crazy. And so it just became the most defining moment in my life by that time. And so to say goodbye to it was really hard because so much of your identity is tied into this defining thing in your life. And to sort of say goodbye to it felt like I was so I wasn't acting in the scene. I was really like saying goodbye to some of my best friends and Arthur. I was saying goodbye to this whole identity that I had for myself and everything. So it was really intense.
It was.
Yes,
it was. Well, again, you're. The interesting thing about modern Doctor Who is the way it invests so much more into the companion characters.
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to the utility of, "Great Scott, what is it, Doctor?" And then the Doctor explains to the companion, which explains to the audience. You had,
yeah.
but yeah, it still is. But you,
River, the whole story arcs and everything else just built to that crescendo, and
Yeah, Stephen Moffat really kind of gave us a good run at it. And so yeah, for that moment it was like, oh my god, we really are leaving. Like we're gonna go out into the world without this in our lives anymore. It's weird.
Well, the anniversary is coming up in a few years. Just saying.
What number are we on?
I think it's coming up on 60.
60 years?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
The 50th was only yesterday. I don't know.
I know. You think about it. Wait, no, it was about 5 years ago. Yeah.
Okay, I'm old, and this is scary. And it's the longest running sci-fi show in the world. It's mad.
I didn't know it had been going on for that long. That's crazy.
Yeah.
There was a break in the late 80s to about the mid 90s and flashed on again, and then with Christopher Eccleston in 2003 it came back full force.
Wow.
So, yes, it is.
Amazing. Well, that actually made me think about my last scene on House, actually.
Yeah.
Which was, that was like also a weirdly emotional time. They were making changes on the show. It was a weird thing to be told, like, Cameron's going to leave the hospital and she's not going to come back. And I was like, wait, what? There were so many characters on the show at that point. I think they just wanted to keeping the show fresh, which I understand. And also, like, what Cameron was doing in the hospital was sort of ancillary at that point in the storytelling. So as much as there was a part of me that was like, I know ultimately this is good, I'm going to move on and have new things. Like Karen said, that was a huge part of my life. At that point, it had been a fifth of my life that I was there. And it was just, it was all we had because our hours were so crazy. I mean, a good day on House was an 18-hour day. My very last day on that set was 21 hours. Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, it just really, really crazy hours. And so that was really that was my entire life for those years. It wasn't like there were no dinners, there was no going to birthday parties, there was no, there was none of that. So these were your people, and I had a really intense like walk and talk scene as my very last. I had all this medical jargon and all this stuff, and it was one of those ones where, I'm like, just spewing all these medical words really quickly in a walk and talk with my heart pounding, knowing like I was about to say goodbye to this show, and I could feel everybody gathering, and I could feel, it's like you sort of feel the pressure mounting of everyone like watching the last scene. And it was just, I don't even remember exactly what I was talking about. I just remember it was a lot. And so to stay focused and to stay grounded and stay in the performance, knowing that me as a person was having a really emotional moment that I had to really kind of bury while I was trying to stay professional and really do my job right, was definitely a tricky moment.
One of the decisions, I think the writing for both of your characters at both of those exits, I think both of you wrote out on the respective series on the highest of horses.
Oh, thank you.
And I was a fan of Doctor Who, and I was very much a fan of House, and I was like, wait, why is she? That does not compute, and yeah. But
you got to be careful. You're going to become both of our therapists if you keep saying all these things.
But onward, again, that's showbiz, as we all know.
That's it. So, when did you sleep is what I want to know. Like, how were you getting any sleep?
No, I mean, obviously there's the turnaround hours. It was just, we would have these crazy situations where we'd start at like 5 or 6 a.m. on a Monday, right? But if that was an 18-hour day, that would mean even giving everyone their shortest turnarounds and some people forced calls, the earliest you could start was like 9 a.m. on Tuesday, but then that would push it to like 11 or 12 on Wednesday. And there were times that by Friday we had 4 p.m. calls.
Yeah.
And we were on stage. This wasn't because we needed nighttime, like this was just because the hours would just keep going. And so, sometimes we always called them Fridays, you'd start at 3 or 4 p.m. on a Friday, and then you'd finish Mid morning, late morning, whatever the math of that is on Saturday.
That's the big difference between American TV and British TV. So in the UK, you work set hours every day, and no matter where you are in the material, you finish at 7 p.m. or whatever they've decided, and you just cut it off, no matter what. And they will.
So civil. I've never even heard of this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So like basically, you're just the same hours every day, and you just have to pick it back up or go back to locations if you didn't get it. But like if you go over that time, people are like, we're gonna turn the electricity off. Like,
wow,
the big difference.
That's huge. I mean, they have all sorts of rules about like, the mornings were manageable because at 6 hours ish, and they can pay for a meal penalty, but at 6 hours, between 6, 7, 8ish hours, you have to stop for a sitting meal. Yeah. So you could always go like, okay, I know the morning is going to be 6 or 7 hours long, and after that, you just never knew it was going to end because they just have to keep feeding you. So like once you get back from lunch at the 6 hour mark, if they think they're going to keep going, then they have to bring in another meal, but then they can bring in that other meal and keep going. So it was wild. I really had to learn how to take care of myself. It's really the beginning of my journey of like learning self-care was like learning how much water I needed to drink and how many vitamins I needed to take and how to try to like really plan my sleep as much as possible because, if they forced my call, which would mean from the time I left set to when I got back was only 10 hours instead of 12, if you have a 30, 40-minute drive home and a 30, 40-minute drive into work, that means you're only really home for 8 hours. And then you have to memorize for the next day. You need to eat. Yep. You need to sort of do something like a human. And that leaves maybe, if you're lucky, 6 hours to sleep. So it really was the beginning of me learning how to like figure out how to take care of myself properly.
And add another level on to all the medical jargon that your character would have to do as well. Yeah. So, equity and SAG, different animals, different continents. Absolutely.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, I don't say any of that with like a complaint. I feel like I learned so much because of all of it, and I wouldn't have changed any of it. It's just, I think, different than how people like imagine it to be, I think.
Oh, very much so. And a reminder to our audience, if you'd like to chat with our panelists like I am now, purchase an autograph, get a personalized recorded message, please, you can still sign up over at galaxycon.com. We've got time for a few more. So, Jude, what's next? Because we're back. What are some hobbies that you have taken on during the pandemic? Well, we know you're doing some baking. Mm-hmm. Anything else?
I've not been baking at all. I haven't actually baked anything in my life. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Do you like cheesecake, Karen?
I love cheesecake.
I'll make you a cheesecake.
Okay.
I've gotten very good, like a healthy cheesecake. You like cheesecake too? Are you in LA?
I'm in Orlando.
I don't know if my cheesecake will make it to Orlando, but I have figured out a very macro-friendly, healthy, but tasty version of cheesecake.
That sounds incredible, and I would accept all of the cheesecakes.
I will send you. I make the crust myself and everything.
Whenever I host Karen, she always ends up being fed.
I always gain food. I think it's because I thought about how I don't cook or do anything, and people feel sorry for me. They send me cheesecake.
My proud point is I can say I gave Karen her very first Tootsie Roll.
Wow. That's amazing.
I know. Well, I put that on my resume. So Karen, did you, any
interesting fact, I'm starting to get really into tech. Like, as in, like, Silicon Valley tech. And so I'm watching a load of YouTube videos, and I'm currently building something that I'm really excited about, but I don't want to give it away now, because I will probably build this thing, and I will tell you guys all about it in a proper, more detailed way. But I'm really getting into that side of things, which I never expected to happen, but I'm like obsessed with it now.
Does that mean like programming or like?
I'm building something, but I'm not programming myself. I'm not a coder, but I'm getting coders to do it for me. And
wow.
I'm it. It kind of feels like directing a movie and your actors are coders.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really fun. I like it.
We will stay tuned to your social media outlets and see for updates on that. Ooh, that's excellent. Man, thank you for that. That was a good one. Jude, what's next? From Leo, if you could only complete one last bucket list item, what would it be?
What would that be? Like any like one thing you want to achieve in your life type thing.
Or
Yeah.
Experience?
Anything. The bucket list is pretty much just an achievement, an activity, a destination, a plateau, a project.
Mine would have been Japan, but then I went there.
That's definitely on my bucket list. What was Japan like?
Oh, the best.
Amazing.
So I barely left the hotel because we were there for press, and so then you get sent to these amazing places, and then don't get to leave the hotel. Like, I didn't even have sushi outside of the hotel.
Oh wow.
So I will definitely go back there. That's a big one for me. But even like being in the hotel in my one outing, like I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, it seems so magical, like just so different than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point, because I know when the press junkets for events like the Marvel movies, we see you on everybody on the talk shows and doing the things and whatnot. And what people don't understand is that everybody picks up, they hop on a plane, and they go to another continent, and they do it all over again that week.
Yeah.
And
Like as well. You're like, what am I even saying?
You're repeating yourself and your jet lag. It's definitely scary.
yeah, if you like the last Avengers movie, you'll love this one.
Yeah. Scared of spoilers. I mean, I'm gonna say that my tech venture is a bucket list thing for me.
No, absolutely.
I'm not giving anything away of it.
No, I'm very excited about that. So.
I mean, I definitely would say Japan. I would put it between either visiting Japan and like really traveling and really experiencing all of the different elements of Japan. I've been like rewatching all of Kurosawa's movies. I just read his autobiography, and there's just such like interesting, rich history there, and everything that country has been through, and the technology is so different, and a lot of nature have these they have these sort of like miraculous things in nature there too. So I'd be curious to learn more and experience that. But I also have always really liked the idea of going on like and I feel like my fantasy of this is probably better than the reality, but one of those like big overnight trains that goes around like the coast of
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I feel like I have this romantic vision of what it would be to have like a fancy sleeper car and like
I think you an express, you're gonna get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would put that on that list.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. And just because I'm a Kurosawa nerd, do you have a favorite Kurosawa film?
I'm still working my way through the rewatches, so I don't know if I could like say for sure, just because the ones that I have seen I saw so long ago that I didn't have the same sort of understanding of filmmaking. Like I wasn't looking at it with the same lens that I'm looking at it now.
Sure.
I mean, I just rewatched High and Low, which is such a. I mean, my God, the camera work on that is just incredible, but also just the how intriguing that story is of like someone else's child being kidnapped when they thought it was your child, and then what would you risk to save that child? Like it's the question that it poses, the moral question that it poses, and